You've seen the clips, you've heard the outrage, and for weeks, the narrative has been laser-focused on a single, explosive idea, that Game 5 of the WNBA semifinals was stolen from the Indiana Fever. But what if that's not the real story? What if the rigged game that everyone is talking about wasn't the start of the fire, but the inevitable explosion at the end of a season-long war the league tried desperately to keep hidden? That's the part of the story they don't want you to connect, because this wasn't just about one game. This was about a calculated rebellion led by the league's most powerful coaches against an officiating crisis so severe they called it F-ing malpractice. It's a story of fines, a dramatic suspension, and a commissioner who publicly defended the system while her coaches were privately declaring war. Today, we're going to filter out the noise of the Game 5 controversy and expose the much bigger story, the unified front of WNBA coaches who risked their careers to expose the league, and the moment their warnings finally came true for the entire world to see. We are a community of narrative analysts here, dedicated to uncovering the story behind the story. If you believe in that mission, do me a favor and hit that like button right now. It's a simple click that tells us you want the truth, not just the talking points. All right, let's get into the evidence. To understand how we got to the chaos of Game 5, you first have to understand the two completely different realities the WNBA was living in during the 2025 season. First, there's the official story. This is the polished corporate version projected by the league office. In this reality, things are under control. When confronted with concerns about the officiating, WNBA Commissioner Cathy Engelbert has been publicly defensive, assuring everyone that the systems in place are sound and that every play is scrutinized. It's a message designed to project stability and confidence, to reassure fans and broadcast partners that the game is fair and its integrity is intact. But then there's the other reality, the one happening on the court, on the sidelines, and in the post-game press conferences. This is the reality that many are calling the WNBA Officiating Crisis of 2025, a season that saw an unprecedented level of criticism from coaches and players across the entire league. It was a season of simmering frustration that was about to boil over in the most public way imaginable, thanks to one coach who decided she was done playing by the league's rules. That simmering frustration finally exploded during the 2025 playoffs, and it came from one of the most respected and powerful voices in the entire sport, Minnesota Lynx head coach Cheryl Reeve. After a hard-fought playoff game, Reeve didn't just criticize a few bad calls. She walked into the press conference and launched a surgical strike against the league's entire officiating system. She called the officiating crew bleeping awful, and then delivered the line that would echo across the league, calling the leadership's decision to assign that crew to a playoff game bleeping malpractice. This wasn't a coach letting off steam. This was a declaration of war. She was openly questioning the competence of the league's leadership and demanding change at the highest level. The league's response was swift and predictable. They suspended Cheryl Reeve for Game 4. They tried to make an example of her, to send a clear message to every other coach in the league. Sit down and be quiet. But in doing so, they completely misread the room. They thought they were ending a rebellion, but they had just given it a martyr. The question was no longer if the system was broken, but who else would be brave enough to say it out loud. What do you think? Was a suspension the right call? Or did Cheryl Reeve do what needed to be done to force a conversation the league was avoiding? Let us know your take in the comments below. The league clearly hoped the suspension would scare everyone else into silence. They wanted to isolate Cheryl Reeve and frame her as a rogue coach with an axe to grind. But that's not what happened. Instead of backing down, two more of the league's most prominent coaches saw the line that had been drawn in the sand, and they decided to cross it together. Instead of isolating Cheryl Reeve, the suspension galvanized her peers. The first to step forward was Indiana Fever's own head coach, Stephanie White. She publicly backed Reeve's comments, and for her act of solidarity, the league fined her $1,000. Think about that. Weeks before her own team would be at the center of the biggest officiating controversy of the year, Stephanie White was already on the front lines of this fight, paying a price for telling the league that there was a serious problem. But the most stunning development came from the coach of the league's powerhouse, the two-time defending champion Las Vegas Aces, Becky Hammon. In a move that showed this crisis transcended team loyalty, Hammon also voiced her support for Reeve's criticism. She too was handed a $1,000 fine. Let's filter out the noise and understand what that means. The coach of the so-called dynasty, the very team fans would later accuse of getting preferential treatment, was standing shoulder to shoulder with her rivals, telling the league its officiating was out of control. This was the moment the league should have known they had lost control of the narrative. This wasn't one disgruntled coach anymore. It was a unified movement. Three of the most successful and respected coaches in the WNBA, representing different teams and different conferences, were all saying the exact same thing, and they were willing to pay a financial price to make their voices heard. The league's response? Fines and silence. They treated a systemic crisis like a minor disciplinary issue. They refused to publicly acknowledge the validity of the complaints. They put their heads in the sand and hoped the problem would just go away. It didn't. Instead, it festered right up until the deciding Game 5 of the semifinals, where the entire crisis would detonate on national television, proving every single one of those coaches right in the most spectacular and devastating way possible. What happened in Game 5 wasn't just a series of bad calls. It was the validation of every warning the coaches had given. It was the crisis they predicted, playing out for the world to see. The Fever, already decimated by 6 season-ending injuries, including to their superstar, Caitlin Clark, were fighting for their lives against the defending champs. And it became clear they weren't just battling the Aces, they were battling the whistle. The game's most pivotal moment came with just over 26 seconds left in regulation, with the score tied 84-84. Fever All-Star center Aliyah Boston was battling for a rebound and was hit with a devastating and highly controversial 6th foul. The Fever challenged the call, but it stood. Their best interior player was gone for the most important possession of the season. The numbers told the story the coaches had been telling all year. The Fever were called for 25 fouls, and the Aces lived at the free throw line. Ija Wilson alone shot 10 free throws in the game, but the most terrifying consequence of the chaotic, uncontrolled physicality came in the third quarter. Kelsey Mitchell, after taking a beating all night, collapsed on the court. She was later hospitalized and diagnosed with rhabdomyolysis, a rare and serious condition where muscle tissue breaks down. She described the moment as a numbness, paralyzing feeling with no movement from my lower extremities. This wasn't just about a bad call anymore. The crisis was now having a direct and dangerous impact on player health. The Fever's eventual overtime loss was almost a footnote. The real story had already been written. The fan outrage was immediate and overwhelming. Social media exploded with hashtags calling the game rigged and demanding an investigation into the league's officiating. Fan-made compilation videos showing the missed calls and biased whistles went viral. The league had tried to silence its coaches, and in doing so, it had lost the trust of its fans. The war Cheryl Reeve had started was now being fought by an army of supporters online. The only question left was, why was this happening in the first place? When you filter out the noise, the motive that many fans and analysts landed on becomes terrifyingly logical. This wasn't just incompetence. Many believe it was a feature, not a bug. The widespread theory is that the league has a vested interest in protecting its poster team, the Las Vegas Aces. A 4th finals appearance in 6 years and a potential three-peat is a highly marketable dynasty narrative. A gritty, injury-riddled Indiana Fever team playing Cinderella threatens that narrative. The coaches' rebellion, therefore, wasn't just against bad calls, it was against a system they believed was no longer impartial. They exposed a league that had become so invested in its own storyline that it was willing to sacrifice the integrity of the game to protect it. The war is far from over. With coaches now openly defiant, fans demanding accountability, and players like Sophie Cunningham putting the league on notice that they are coming for everybody, the offseason is no longer a break. It's a battleground for the soul of the WNBA. So, what's your take on all this? Whose side are you on in this fight for the league's future? Let us know in the comments if you stand with team coaches who are fighting for accountability, or team league office who believe the system isn't broken. This story is going to evolve all offseason as the league decides how to respond to this crisis. To make sure you don't miss any of the backroom negotiations or public power plays, subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell. Finally, if you know another fan who only saw the Game 5 highlights, share this video with them. Every narrative analyst deserves to understand the full story of the war that led to that moment.